Many years ago, Volkswagen offered an SUV called the Touareg. It was fantastic, basically a budget Porsche Cayenne or Bentley Bentayga. They did even share the same platform. Now the Touareg was super premium, had great engines, great capability, and Americans just didn't even care. It was simply too expensive for them. So Volkswagen introduced a new SUV called the Atlas that was more catered to the American market. It was a lot less expensive and it had a third row. Now for the 2020 model year, Volkswagen introduced a new model called the Atlas Cross Sport. This is a 2021 model. Now the Cross Sport is basically the same as an Atlas, but it's a little bit shorter and it's slanted in the back and it only has 2 rows. So today I'm going to show you what the Atlas Cross Sport is all about. Let's start, as we always do, with an exterior walk around of the 2021 Atlas Cross Sport, where up front you're going to see a very familiar front fascia from the Atlas. It looks basically the same. We have this very macho front end, very wide, very aggressive looking. I think this is very catered and very suited to an American audience, as is the silver paint. Americans like boring paint. I actually like it here. I usually like exciting colors, but I think that this silver does the Atlas Cross Sport some justice. With these really nice IQ light headlights, I think they look very nice. We have the R-Line package, so we have this kind of different diffuser here. You also have a little R here on the grille. We also have Volkswagen's new two-dimensional logo. I think it is much nicer looking, much cleaner than the outgoing logo. Now, since we have that R-Line package, we have these gray 18-inch wheels. I think they look great on this vehicle. There are some two-tone wheels you can get higher up, but I think these gray ones actually match the character of the car really well. It's going to say Atlas almost everywhere, except right here you get this little fender flitzer, that's what they call them, that says Cross Sport. That's pretty much the only area where it actually says Cross Sport. You also have a little Volkswagen emblem right here on the A-pillar. Now the whole vehicle is about 2 inches shorter and about 5 inches, or 2 inches lower, sorry, and 5 inches shorter than the 3-row Atlas. But the main thing that you're going to notice stylistically is back here. The roof line is heavily raked. It's what they call an SUV coupe, sort of like a BMW X6. You get a slightly different tail light as well. This big chrome piece across here that says Atlas with the new VW logo. I think it looks really nice back here, almost sort of like a budget Audi Q8, which is also a very attractive SUV. We have our model designation right here, SE, also V6. Again, V6 only comes with the R-Line. You can't get a 4-cylinder R-Line, and we have 4Motion all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive is also available. Now this is a Cross Sport, so they have tried to make it a little bit sporty. We have these integrated faux exhaust pipes here on the bumper, but they're fake and they're definitely not going to be fooling anybody into thinking that those are real pipes. Now it's time to hop inside of the cabin for the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport, and let's start with what's in front of me here. We've got very normal gauges. We have the SE trim with a technology package and with the R-Line, so let's talk about what that gets you. We have very normal gauges here. These actually look pretty similar to what I had on my Volkswagen CC back in 2009. You can get Volkswagen's beautiful digital display here, but only on much higher trim levels, not here on this SE model. Because we have the R-Line, we have this very nice sporty steering wheel with perforations here on the side. This feels very much like what you would get on like a nicer luxury Audi model. We have this silver trim that's not super premium, but it does look pretty cool, and the buttons have a very nice feel to them as well. We also have the little R logo letting us know that we have an R design. Here, Volkswagen's new two-dimensional logo looks very modern and very clean. I think it goes well with what they're doing here. Now, the materials on this cabin are a mixed bag. We've got some very hard, very cheap feeling scratchy plastics down low, but up top we have some very nice soft touch materials here on the dash and on the door cards as well. We have a plain black interior. It's very dark black in here. We have sort of like a faux carbon finish on the sides of the seats, which I think looks pretty cool. There is a little bit of gray leather here on the door. I actually really like that. I kind of wish they added a little bit more gray leather here on the seats, because the gray leather does look pretty nice. And we do have an optional panoramic roof that's massive, giving a little bit more sunlight in here and making this cabin feel a little bit brighter. brighter. And I do really like the brushed aluminum look with this sort of faux carbon look here over on the side. Gives this a very sporty look. You know, this is a cross sport after all. Now over here we have the optional head unit. A 6-inch unit comes standard on the S model, but if you're getting the SE trim, you're going to be getting this 8-inch unit. I think it's a pretty good one. We don't have navigation here, but what we do have, if I pull up apps, is CarPlay and Android Auto. And if you'll notice, or not notice in this case something, no wires, all wireless here on Volkswagen for the 2021 model year. So I'm very impressed with that functionality here. We do also get dual automatic climate control. We have heated seats, no ventilated seats, that's found higher up there. And if I put it in reverse, we're gonna have a basic backup camera with some parking sensors, no 360-degree camera, at least low down here on this SE trim. Now let's talk a little bit about storage. We have tons of it. We have huge pockets here on the doors. We have this little cubby area next to the steering wheel. We have this nice storage area, kind of like a pickup truck here on the dash. We have a very large area ahead of the cup holders and the shifter with 2 USBs and a 12-volt. There's also a wireless charger in there, which is really nice, this low down on the Atlas Crossport totem pole. 2 very large, very grippy cup holders. Volkswagen does excellent cup holders. And here in the center armrest, I have a massive amount of storage. It's not super deep, but it is very wide. I can fit my entire DSLR camera in here, no problem. And before we hop into the back seat, I want to talk about the drive modes here. We have this very intricate drive mode selector here. So right now I have it on my road mode, and if I hit this button up on the top, I can cycle between normal, sport, custom, and eco mode. I've noticed a pretty big difference between normal, sport, and eco there. And if I turn this dial to the left, this surrounding vehicle, I have a snow mode that's going to make it, you know, a little bit more careful with the throttle and the traction control and things like that. I also have an off-road auto mode and an off-road custom mode. I don't think too many Atlas owners are going to be using those too much, but it's nice that Volkswagen at least put it there in case you do have some aspirations of taking this on a dirt trail. So hopping on in the back seat, the Crossport benefits from basically being an Atlas but with one less row of seats. So we have a massive amount of space back here, over 40 inches of legroom. Look how big this is. A virtually flat floor back here. So even if I come over here in the middle, I can still be quite comfortable. We have air vents even on this lower trim model. We have 2 USB-Cs and a 115-volt outlet down there. And the thing that I like is, even though these seats don't slide, I think you have plenty of legroom already. They do recline really far back, and you can get very comfortable in the Crossport. So just like with the back seat, the Crossport benefits from basically being a Atlas that they've just kind of shortened a little bit and deleted the 3rd row from. You get a little over 40 cubic feet of space back here. It's absolutely massive, the distance between here and those rear seats. And if you fold those down, you're gonna get about 78 cubic feet of space. That is absolutely ginormous. It's about the same size as the Honda Passport, although the Honda Passport edges it by very, very small, minimal numbers here. But I really like how this storage space is integrated. We've got these really nice cargo hooks here. They feel very solid and they feel like they could hold a lot of weight. We have an area here that you could put a gallon of milk in. We have our spare tire underneath here. The only thing I don't like about this storage area here is there's no seat releases back here. You have to go into the back seat to do that. But what I do like is every model except the base Crossport is going to get one of these power tailgates. All right, so let's get the Atlas Crossport out on the road. And because we have the R-Line model, the R-Lines are only available with Volkswagen's larger of the 2 engines. So let's talk about that one first. It's a 3.6 liter V6, but not just any V6. It is a very unique to Volkswagen design. It's called a VR6. Now they've been making these for years. You used to be able to get them in cars like the Volkswagen Golf R32 and the Passat R36 over in Europe. Now it's 3.6 liters, as I mentioned, and instead of it being a V with 2 cylinder heads, they're more narrow, sort of like this. So almost like an inline 6, it only has 1 bank of cylinder heads. So it's really interesting design there. It's good for packaging and things like that, the narrow angle. It produces decent numbers, not not best in class by any respect. 276 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque, and you can get that with front or 4-motion all-wheel drive. We have the 4-motion on this one, and no matter what, all that power is going to go out through an 8-speed automatic transmission. This is a really good 8-speed automatic. I think it is one of the best in the class, so I'm going to give Volkswagen props on the smoothness of this transmission. But I am not going to give Volkswagen props for this VR6, and I'm going to show you why. So I mentioned some of those drive modes. We're going to go ahead and put it into its sport drive mode just to hear the engine a little bit better. No paddle shifters on the wheel, interesting for an R-Line, and I'm going to accelerate and let's see what happens. So not very fast. You do 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds on this car. You might be able to hear the engine just stays up at that high RPM. It takes a really long time to bring the RPMs down. I'm not sure if that's an engine thing or a transmission tuning thing, especially in sport mode there. The all-wheel drive system's great. It detects wheel slip before any occurs, so there was zero drama off the line there, but I am just not that impressed with this VR6 motor. Now, back in the day when they used to put the 3.2 liter version of this engine in the R32, it was a screamer. It made a wonderful noise. It revved freely. You could tune it. It sounded so great. And this just has different heads, different internals, different build altogether. I mean, it's serving a very different purpose than the R32 did. This isn't a big SUV after all, but they've just made it sound not great. It doesn't sound throaty anymore. It just kind of sounds very industrial. And I don't love the way that it delivers power in a vehicle like this, because peak horsepower, that 276 horsepower number, doesn't come until 6,200 RPM. So you really have to rev this guy out to exceed the power there. And the 266 pound-feet of torque number, that doesn't come until 3,500 RPM, which doesn't sound that bad, but I'm gonna hit 3,500 RPM. Ready? There. So you really have to rev it out quite a bit to get to the peak torque. Now let's talk about the smaller of the two engines. It's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Now Volkswagen puts these in everything, and it produces about the same amount of power as in other vehicles, 235 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. So that's a pretty significant drop on the horsepower. The torque is really close. It's almost about the same, but it's how that 4-cylinder delivers the power that I think is interesting. Peak power comes at 5,000 RPM, which, you know, it's a little bit better instead of 6,200 RPM, but the peak torque in that engine hits at 1,600 RPM. That's a huge difference. So instead of having to rev to 3,500, you only have to rev to 1,600 to get the peak torque. So if it were my money, I think I might just save about $2,000, which is about the price delta between these motors, and I might just get the 4-cylinder engine. The only thing you're really going to lose out on is towing. If you plan to tow with this vehicle, you're going to get about 5,000 pounds of towing with this VR6, only 2,000 pounds if you get the 4-cylinder motor. So that's something to consider. But the fuel economy is a huge benefit of the 4-cylinder. With front-wheel drive, you're going to get 21 in the city, 24 on the highway, and 22 combined. That's pretty good. Those numbers drop to 18 in the city, 23 on the highway, and 20 combined with all-wheel drive. But factor in what the VR6 gets. It's going to get 17, 23, 19 with front-wheel drive and 16, 22, 19 with all-wheel drive. So it's pretty decent that it still manages only 1 mpg worse with all-wheel drive in this respect. But 16 mpg in the city is not so great. You're going to get 18 mpg in the city with the 4-cylinder. So that's something to consider there. So that's the engines covered, and I'm not going to spend too much longer talking about how the Atlas Cross Sport drives. As I've mentioned before, this is the MQB chassis, so it feels a lot like a Volkswagen Golf, a very big Volkswagen Golf. The steering is extremely light, although it's decently accurate. You put it in sport mode and it weights up significantly. You get a lot better steering in sport mode. I actually quite like the weight in sport mode. I wish you could just kind of have that all all the time. The ride is firm, as with most German cars, but not uncomfortable by any stretch. German cars typically want you to feel the road. You know, they don't want you to be completely detached and disconnected. It's pretty quiet in here. There is some road noise, but I would say it's pretty sound deadened in here. And overall, I would say the body roll is minimal, and the overall driving experience is fine. It's a very solid, very precise experience that I would say is among the better driving experiences that you're going to get from a mid-size SUV. I don't think it's quite as fun as the Kia Sorento that I drove. That thing is just an absolute blast to drive, but I think that the Cross Sport semi lives up to its sport piece of its name. So that was the 2021 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. I think this is a pretty nifty idea. Take a 3-row vehicle, cut 2 rows off of it, and just keep the same amount of storage space. That's useful for people who are never going to use that 3rd row. Now, I think the Cross Sport is a very handsome looking vehicle. I think some people are really going to like the design. It's got some pretty good technology inside, and as I mentioned, the storage space is fantastic. I think it is a worthy adversary to the Honda Passport. I think the Passport has the better engine, but this has the better transmission and better technology. I think the Kia Sorento is still the best all-rounder in this segment because it offers a 3rd row and a fantastic engine, but I think if you're looking for a handsome 2-row SUV with a ton of space, the Cross Sport should be on your shopping list. We hope you've enjoyed this review of the 2021 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. For more videos like it, be sure to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos, and check us out on all of our other social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok, where we have short little videos of cars just like this one. I'll see you next time.